It's days like this that I'm very grateful for my father and the upbringing that I had. My parents just celebrated their 44th anniversary back in May. And one of the things I shared with them over the phone was I very much appreciated that they stuck it out for this long. Where in our society now, when things tend to go wrong, families, marriages just tend to dissolve. They just leave and get a divorce, and the evangelical world is a big problem with that, because if you don't already know, let me tell you that the divorce rate in the church is higher than in the secular world. And if I was speaking to a bunch of pastors right now, which I have overseas, I would look at them right in their eyes and say, "You are the biggest problem when it comes to that." Because they have shirked their responsibility in teaching what the Bible says about that. But let me start out with this about Father's Day. This is my father, when I was 4 years old. Remember this? When I was 4 years old, my daddy could do anything. At 5 years old, my daddy knows a whole lot. 6 years old, my dad is smarter than your dad. At 8 years old, my dad doesn't know exactly everything. At 10 years old, in the olden days when my dad grew up, things were sure different. At 12 years old, naturally, Dad doesn't know anything about that. He's too old to remember his childhood. At 14 years old, don't pay any attention to my dad. He's so old-fashioned. At 21 years old, my Lord, he's hopelessly out of date. At 25 years old, Dad knows about it, but then he should, because he's been around for so long. At 30 years old, maybe we should ask Dad what he thinks. After all, he's had a lot of experience. At 35 years old, I'm not doing a single thing until I talk to Dad. At 40 years old, I wonder how Dad would have handled it. He was so wise. And at 50 years old, I'd give anything if Dad were here right now, so I could talk it over with him. Too bad I didn't appreciate when he was here. 6 things dads need to know. I was in Chicago the whole week while VBS was going on, although every night I got the update on how things were going. I was praying for you daily. In fact, the class that I was sitting through, the professor and the other pastors there were praying for all of you this week for VBS. Every morning we had a special time of prayer. And one of the things that I thought about when I was getting this message ready was about not only about fathers, but how we appreciate fathers, and how in turn fathers do appreciate their children. And it really came to light. I left downtown Chicago. I usually stay at my sister's house, and she lives in the southwest suburb. And it usually takes me, if it's a good day, it takes me 45 minutes to 1 hour to leave downtown and to get there to her house. And this particular day, I got out of school 10 minutes early, and the expressway was clear, and I was cooking. Now, in Chicago, the speed limit's 55. But you don't go 55, because 55 will get you killed. So, no, it's true. And usually it's about 75 or 80. You know, and that's okay because you're moving right along. Well, I'm going, yes, Lord, you know that I sinned. I was going about 80. And there are message boards along the highway to tell you how long it's going to take you to get to a certain point. So as I'm on the Southern Expressway, they say there's an accident and all the lanes are shut down. And it was too late for me to even try and get off somewhere. And 2 construction workers were setting out barricades, you know, to like block a whole lane. And some young man didn't see them and killed them. And it just brought to my mind that, you know, some parents, some fathers lost his son right before Father's Day. And I thought, wow, how sad. So it was shut down. I sat in traffic for 3 hours, just sat there. And when I finally got to where the accident was, it was horrible. Absolutely horrible. And I just started praying for those dear families that lost their men, you know. We live in a day today where a lot of men, and Christian men, have lost their passion and given up on it, the ministry they have to lead their families. Okay? So I'm going to come after them today. Okay? And for all you wives that are going to sit there and nudge him when I say things, this has to do with you too. Because next May, when I'm here full time and I do Mother's Day, and I preach this as this is for me too. So don't just think I'm shouting at you guys. So this is absolutely for all of us. So 1 Peter chapter 3. On your notes there, 6 things dads need to know. Number 1 is treasure your wife. Oh, and one more thing. There are various texts here, and maybe you haven't noticed this in the times that I have been here. I am not a flipper. And what I mean by that, when I preach, I stay in one text. That's it. Very, very rarely will I have you turn to another reference. And that's just a personal passion with me. That's what I teach pastors when I'm teaching them how to preach and stuff. You know what? I don't flip, and I don't want you to flip. But today you're going to flip. So, okay. So, First Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Husbands likewise dwell with them, wives, with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. Number 1 on your notes there is to treasure your wife, to honor her, no matter what. And remember that she is your equal. One of the things that we forget is how we need to still treasure our wives. And one of the things I wrote down here in my notes here is many times as kids, as they start to get older, so one of the things that we struggle with is that kids, as they get older, as they get to start to be 8, 10, and that's why I kind of read those things. And then when they get into the teens, and they get more independent, they change the way they talk to their parents, especially their mothers. Because I've sat across my desk as I'm counseling families, and the child or teenager or young adult will look at their parents and, did your mother ever wash your mouth out with soap? Mine did. I know it's hard to believe, but mine did. And sometimes I can't believe what I hear children say to their parents or even to their mother. And I know, being in the public schools, you can't admit, the way kids talk is different. And you honor your guys, you honor your wife, because I've had to do that. Sorry, I'm going to share this. I've had to do that with my children. If they say something to Cheryl in the wrong tone, I need to remind them, whoa, wait a minute. Can I tell you something? Let's not forget, that's still Mom. And that's one thing that we've lost, that we have to remember, that to treasure her. And one of the ways that I do is I make sure that our kids always show proper respect to their parents, especially their mom. Why? That's Mom. No matter what, it's Mom. Could Mom be wrong? Absolutely. But it's still Mom. I try, this is what I've learned, to never let, and even when I counsel, never let the children walk all over the mom. I stand up for her. To a point that Cheryl's family, a wonderful, wonderful family, and very, very close-knit family. And there have been times that maybe we've been married, 30 years next year. See, you thought I didn't know. But there were times when we were young that maybe her family had forgotten that we were married. And something would be said in a way that a father would talk to his daughter. And I had to remind them, I'm her husband. That's my wife. Is she still your daughter? Absolutely. But she's my wife now. She's part of me. So, we need to be cautious the way we talk to my wife. One of the things that you need to do, dads, is to honor your wife. And remember, she is your equal. She will be there long after the kids are gone. And as my equal, I seek her counsel. Case in point, my brother-in-law and my sister live in they're a very nice house, and they have done so well. And my brother-in-law has this really cool-looking car. It's a 1993 Buick Riviera that he got from his dad when his dad passed away. And it's 15 years old, only has 60,000 miles on it. Garage kept. It is nice. And I've always asked them that if they ever get rid of it or sell it, to let me know. Well, I fly to Chicago last Saturday night, a week ago yesterday, and Chicago had Kansas tornadoes. It did. So my sister, we were hanging out, and she said, we're going to sell the Buick. And I said, okay, now, does God, in the leadership that He has allowed me to have, according to His Word, does He give me the biblical authority to just say, I'll take it. And for those of you who say no, yes, He does. He does. He does. I have the authority, the biblical authority, to make that decision for our family. But I looked at my sister and I said, I'm going to call Cheryl first to get her counsel. Why? Because she is my equal. She deserves the honor to be asked. And don't think that I stand up and just say, oh, well, you know what, gee, he must be really good. No, there have many times that I have blown it. But I just want to tell you, guys, you need to honor. Why? Because God's Word says so. Dwell with them, giving honor. Understand them. Treat them as a weaker vessel. Why? Because you are heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers, because if you don't that, and when I get a chance to preach through 1 Peter, let me tell you something. From the text, if you're not honoring your wife, your prayers will be hindered. Remember that she's your equal, and as she is a prized possession. Cherish her even if you don't feel like it. Seek her counsel. 6 things dads need to know. Treasure your wife. You ready to flip? Ephesians chapter 6. Treasure your wife, point number 1. Point number 2, be active in solving problems. Be active in solving problems. Ephesians 6, 1 through 4. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. And you, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. Be active in solving problems. Why? Because too many dads tend to neglect this. There were times that I knew that there were conflicts going on at home, that there were times I dreaded going home, knowing that there were problems to deal with. Women like to deal with them, men like to take a hike. It's true, but we need to be active in solving problems. One of the things that I learned growing up, being in a church that was very European, that there are a lot of marriages overseas, especially in Europe, that have the roles reversed, where the wife is the one leading the home. And the men are just timid. They just bring home the paycheck and that's it. The mother, everything revolves around what the mother says in the household. And that's biblically not correct. So I kind of grew up seeing this, because seeing what my great-grandparents were doing, and my great-grandfather was this he was this strapping, good-looking colonel or general in the Hungarian army, and I've seen pictures of him where he was stoic and with all of his medals and his uniform. But when my great grandmother spoke to him, he became a marshmallow. Not only do you have to honor your wives, but you need to be active in solving problems. Why? Underneath that, too many dads forget that they are accountable. So I don't care whether you're a dad or you're not a dad. The leadership God requires of us is to lead our family and to lead the home. And it's important not to neglect that, to don't hand it off for the wife to take care of. Because we are held accountable. Case in point. For years, I was given the opportunity to train the new guys that would come into our crew to work. And why? I don't know. Maybe God was still teaching me patience, but I would take the time to show the guys what to do and have them do it. And much of the work that I've done, you see these big manhole covers on the street. Well, there's a lot that goes on underneath those things. There's these manholes, some of them are pretty big. And we have cables and wires going through there that are sealed up, hopefully watertight, so they don't get all wet. And so I was training this one guy, and wonderful guy, and he was in the manhole completing the work. And he put the case on all of the wires. He said he made sure it was sealed so no water would get in. Now, I'm the senior man. He's got maybe 5 years with the company. At this time, I probably had 20. So when he was all done, he came out of the manhole and he said, "Do you want to check it?" So I said, "Yes." So I walked over. I looked down. I said, "Well, looks okay. Did you test it?" He said, "Yep, I tested it." This was on a Friday afternoon. I said, "Okay, good enough." Monday morning, I came in, and that cable, it was a 600 pair cable, had gone wet over the weekend. Well, you know what? In the phone business, that's a big deal. That's grounds for time off. So there's a big meeting now. My boss, the union people and everything, and I'm the senior man. Even though I didn't do it, I didn't do the work, I'm responsible for what he did. So we get in this big meeting, and you know, have you heard me say, you know what the key of life is? Knowing who else to blame. Because that's what, when you get into these meetings, that's what people do. Oh, So as they started this whole meeting, I got the union reps, I got the company people here. I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. We can clear this up right now. I am the senior man. I take full responsibility. If you're going to give anybody time off, give it to me. I'll take it." The meeting was over in 5 minutes because I took responsibility. Dads, you're responsible for what goes on in your home. Every part of it. Solving problems is what we're talking about here. Why? Because the text and about how children are to honor their parents. And as fathers, do not provoke them to wrath, but bring them up in the training. Too many dads forget that they are accountable. And as long as we're still in this text, 6 things that they need to know. Treasure your wife. Be active in solving problems. And number 3, be a coach. Because verse 4 says, don't provoke them to wrath. And sometimes we can get so critical as, you know what? We can literally suck the spirit right out of them. But be a coach. Train them. The same way that I took care in training this co-worker, methodically saying, okay, do this and this. When Jimmy first started playing baseball, what did they start out playing? T-ball. So, I'll coach T-ball. Girls and boys, it's great because they don't know nothing. And it's so much fun. And all these kids are learning, you set the ball up there, okay, now swing. And they don't know nothing from nothing. So, okay, here's how you do it. Okay? So show them how to do it. Be patient. Okay? So, well, you missed it. Try it again. But yet when my son got up there, what's the matter with you? Can't you hit that? Doesn't it seem like we have more patience with others than we have with our own family? Dads? We have more patience for other people and other people's children more than our own? I'm not saying, I'm just saying. But I caught myself. I said, here, I'm showing, you know what? I'm showing more patience and more training and more care, more for someone else's child than my own. I'm tougher on him. Be a coach. Train them. And watch what side of the ditch you're on. And what I mean by that is sometimes we can be so positive as they do, is that the big thing in the secular world is never ever hurt your child's esteem. You don't want to do that. Well, you know what? To a point, that's okay. But if you're so positive and positive and positive that then they never learn to fix their mistakes. See what I mean? But then on the other side of that ditch is negative, 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 negative. And there, you know what? You might as well kiss it goodbye, Dad. Because they have then become so discouraged, and I have made both of these mistakes. Mostly on the negative side. Because you know why? You know why they give trophies and medals out to everybody on the team now and just not the best player. You know why? Because you don't want the other kids to feel bad. Excuse me? Shouldn't the best be given the best? And the other ones encouraged to try? Sure. But that's what they... So, dads, it's like, we need to train them. We need to teach them. You know what? You did that great. You know what? That was really good. And instead of being negative, say, hey, would you like to try this next time? Because the text says that. Do not provoke them to wrath. Bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. I might as well say this now. You know how, dads, do you know how your children view God? You know how they see God? Through you. If they think that God is just an old man with a white beard sitting on a throne in heaven throwing fiery darts down on me all the time and negative all the time. If that is their perception of God, can I tell you, more often than not, probably 98, 99% of the time, they are learning that from their dad. Because that's what dad does to them. But if they see God as a loving Father, that's how they view God. So please, treasure your wife. Be active in solving problems. And be a coach. And it's 24/7 because it never ends. Even when they're gone, being a dad never ends. Why? Because I just read you those things before we started. How at 50 years old or 40 years old or even 60 years old, it's like, man, I wish my dad was here. And I'm blessed. My parents are still here. It never, ever, ever ends. 6 things Dad need to know. Treasure your wife, be active in solving problems, and be a coach. Let's flip. Psalm 139. Psalm 139, verses 14 through 16. Listen to this. David says, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed. And in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. He's talking about how God just knew him. God formed him. God made him exactly the way he was supposed to be. And you know what? You have heard me say this probably the first or second time here. My daughter, my handicapped daughter, is exactly the way God wanted her to be. Exactly. He doesn't make any mistakes. So when I say there, treasure your wife, be active in solving problems, be a coach. Number 4, pursue building relationships. Why? Because the text says that David was specifically made. He was formed just the way God wanted him to be. Marvelous are your works. Pursue building relationships. Ask God to help you understand them. Sometimes kids are hard to understand, especially for some reason, God just puts all of that test in the lives of parents with teenage children. They're hard to understand. One of the things that I do is when the kids start to get about 5, 6, 7 years old, I take them out on their birthday. We go, you know what, they can pick anywhere they want to go for dinner on their birthday with just Dad. And when they're young, you know what it is? McDonald's. And as they get older, it gets more expensive. And every year, especially my dear Jessica, she loves this. Every year, I ask the same 16 questions. And I keep a record of what their answers were the year before. Why? Because I want to know what's happening in their heart. I want to know what they're all about. And Jessica couldn't wait to turn 18 years old because she doesn't have to do the questions anymore. And her and I would actually sit there and cry. Both of us crying because of my love for her and everything she's done for us. But that's what I was taught to help understand them. When Pastor Holcomb of Calvary Baptist Church came to me in the fall or in the summer of 2006 and said, would you please lead the college and career students ministry? I said, sure, never done college and career. I'm 48 years old. Shouldn't you get somebody younger? He said, nope, you're exactly the guy we want. So I started talking with some of the students and I said, tell me something. What is the greatest need of the college and career ministry? And this one wise guy, not wise guy, but he showed much wisdom. He said, you know what? We just like to hang out and be heard. That's all. We just want to be heard. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I've been to school. Yeah, I can do that. That was their greatest need. And I wouldn't have known it unless I asked. Oh, this is the time that I speak to the wives. Because if he's not honoring you, if he's not active in solving problems, if he's struggling in being a coach, and if he's not really pursuing relationships, number one, the greatest thing you can do is pray for him. And number two is kind of coach him. Say, you know what? God was just speaking to my heart that maybe, when's the last time you took one of our kids out? Oh, and here's another thing. This doesn't stop with just parents. This goes for grandparents too. Yeah, uh-oh. Oh, just because your kids have left and they have their own kids? Oh, this does not give grandparents freedom to go, whoop, I'm done. Not in the least. This covers all bases. Pursue building relationships. Ask God to help you understand them. Love the ones that aren't very lovable. Because sometimes attitudes can get in the way. Sometimes they can. In that 12 to 18 bracket. When they look at their parents and think they don't know anything. You need to love them, even when they're not so lovable. So, hey, what have we learned? Treasure your wife. Be active in solving problems. Be a coach. Pursue building relationships. Luke chapter 6, verse 45. Listen to this. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good. And an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaks. Number 5, deal with your own heart. Treasure your wife. Be active in solving problems. Be a coach. Pursue building relationships and deal with your own heart first. So it goes, so your heart goes, so goes your family. Men have trouble being transparent. I can't tell you how many times I've had to sit all of my children down and Cheryl and say, you know what? Dad blew it. Dad blew it. The 7 words each and every one of us hate to say, I was wrong, will you forgive me? When it comes to sin, there's no such thing as saying you're sorry. It's not in the Bible. When it comes to sin, I was wrong, will you forgive me? And I've learned how to be transparent. That I say, you know what? I blew it. I was wrong. Will you forgive me? And the text is teaching us that whatever in your heart is going to come out in your home. Why? Because God has, whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, you are the spiritual and physical leader of that home. Deal with your own heart first. So it goes, so goes your family. And be watchful over its condition. One of the things that I've learned is don't expect your family to be a spiritual family if you're not. Because I grew up in an atmosphere where women, the wives and the moms took the kids to church and the husband stayed home. It's very, very important to deal with your own heart. Because so goes the man's heart, so goes his family. Be watchful over its condition. Whatever you let into your heart, whatever garbage this society offers, and you take it into your heart, it will show up in your home. Guaranteed. And the text says, for out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaks. So, if you're putting a lot of garbage in your heart, can I tell you something? There's a lot of garbage coming out of you. It's pretty clear cut. One of the things that I have learned, this is about parenting, but since I'm picking on dads, what you do in moderation, your children will do in excess. You ever heard that? What you do in moderation, your children will do in excess. Case in point, if dad is the type of dad that only likes to go to church maybe one or twice a month, what you do in moderation, when your children get over, they will look back and say, well, my dad, we only went once or twice a month, so it must not be that big of deal, so they will do in excess. We won't even bother going. And it doesn't even have to be something like that. It could be work. Well, my dad, growing up, European background, you work and work and work and work and work. And there were times, right, I worked and worked and worked and worked and work. All the time. 7 days a week. 12 hours a day. What my dad did in moderation, I did in excess. Deal with your own heart. That last text, don't turn to it. You already know it. It's about the two becoming one flesh. Number 6, remember your ministry priorities. Dads, treasure your wife. Be active in solving problems. Be a coach. Pursue building relationships. Deal with your own heart. And remember your ministry priorities. Every dad here, every leader of the home, every leader of the family, can I tell you something? You're all pastors. You lead, feed, protect. That's what a pastor does. You may not know it, but each one of you who lead a household, a family, you're a pastor. The application here, you lead them, feed them, protect them. And you have ministry priorities. The text there is about how God made the two become one flesh. The number one priority in your life, men, husbands, is not your wife. It's your relationship with Jesus Christ. See, you thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? It's not your wife. Your number one priority is your relationship with Jesus Christ. Your number 2 priority is your wife. Notice I haven't mentioned kids yet. You need to sustain that ministry to your wife. When I first started to preach, I got up in front of my home church one day and I said, I love Jesus Christ more than I love my wife, Cheryl. And you could just hear people out there go, huh? But by loving Him, putting Him first, gives me the ability to love her in a way I never thought I could. Christ, your wife, then children. So now the question is, if you're able, when's the last time you had a date with your wife? Remember your ministry priorities. Always be a giver. Give them encouragement. You can do it. Angela struggled these last 2 weeks with her driver's ed course. And I tried to encourage her, even from Chicago. You know, as I was sitting in class, she was texting me. So I was to encourage her to keep going. Don't give up. Leave a memory. And when I mean leave them something that is going to carry on even after you're gone. I have my Grandpa Toth. I have his wallet. I've got his wallet. just a wallet, but it's my grandfather's wallet. Jimmy's already got one of my Bibles. Leave him a memory. And the last thing here, never give up on him. You've probably heard this story, but I love what this means. Decades back, there was a real bad, and you've probably heard this preached, but I love the story. Decades back, there was a real bad earthquake in Romania. Bad. Real bad. And this Romanian father took his son to school, left him at school and went to work. And then the earthquake hit. And I mean, it was devastation. Well, the father runs from work and runs to the school. And you know what's left of the school? Nothing. It's all in one big heap. And meanwhile, other parents start to come, and he's calling his kid's name, trying to, so maybe his son is alive. And he doesn't hear anything. So he starts taking stone by stone, brick by brick, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10, 24 hours. He's hauling these stones, bricks, and calling his son's name. And no answer. 1 day goes by. 2 days go by. They bring in these big tractors and end loaders and start taking all this stuff out. And by hand, he's still picking up and throwing them away, calling his son's name 4 days. And he never gave up. And he's calling, and he takes the stone, and he calls out his son's name, and his son says, "Papa." "Is that you?" He says, "Yes, son, it's me." He says, "I knew, Papa, you would come for me and that you wouldn't give up." No matter what they go through throughout their whole lives, guys, never, ever, ever give up on them. Even if they take a path that's completely against Scripture. So dads, treasure your wife. Be active in solving problems. Be a coach. Pursue building relationships. Deal with your own heart. And remember your ministry priorities. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we do thank you so much for this time that you have given to us. I pray for each and every husband, father, man here, that you would help us to be the leaders that you want us to be. Mold us, Father, into the image of your Son. And we ask these things in His name. Amen.